and welcome to the April bonus episode of Lights, Camera, Accolade. This month, it is me, Chrysantha, who is picking out the movie, and joining me is Jake and Sarah.
Yay!
Happy birthday!
Thank you. So I originally wanted to do stay within the 1930s era, but we're gonna branch out. We're gonna do something a little bit more modern. And I have two movies, and I'll let you guys decide which one of the two. I can't remember if Sarah, if you mentioned that you hadn't seen this one, but I know I picked it out because I remember you mentioned that you haven't, but you can correct me if I'm wrong. It's Misery with Kathy Bates.
Oh, yeah, I haven't seen it.
Okay, so that's one of the selections, and obviously because you haven't seen it, I want to get your opinion and see what you think and, all the good stuff. And then the second one is in honor of you going to Japan. It's not a Japanese film, but it's a movie that I had seen a while back. It's actually a Korean horror mystery, and it's called The Wailing. And it's definitely more creepy. I wouldn't say it's scary. It's more mystery and creepy. But I remember when I watched it, it was gripping. I don't remember ever there being a dull moment throughout the whole thing. And I don't really remember how it ends. I just remember really, really liking this movie. And I was like, oh, this may be a good one to honor your overseas trip. So
those are both intriguing options.
So I can read a very brief synopsis of The Wailing, so you guys can get more of an idea, because I feel like with Misery, it's already, you kind of already know what you're gonna get into. So the synopsis goes: villagers investigate a mysterious new stranger and the killings that arrive with him. There is mass hysteria as loved ones are taken and killed.
Right up your alley.
Yeah, you're like, just a feel-good birthday movie. I'm interested in both, but I think I lean slightly towards Misery because it feels like a milestone that I should have already experienced in my life to watch this movie, but I'm open to either.
I will say I have seen both of these movies, but it has been long enough that I would thoroughly enjoy watching either one. But given that Misery is English speaking and a very modern movie in a sense, I'm kind of leaning towards that as well. But The Wailing is great. I recommend that to listeners just so they know.
Yeah, it is. It's really good. Okay,
and I remember the ending. I don't know how you forgot the ending because that's the most intense thing in it.
I remember pieces of it, but I know it's a very oh my, kind of.
It's oh, they went there. Wow.
Yes. Yeah. I do remember it's a mystery, at the same time. I remember they're trying to solve the murders and stuff like that.
Well, that's what it you're is it supernatural? Is it not supernatural? And then it definitively lands in the end in a certain way, but I won't spoil any more. Viewers that like Parasite, Korean cinema, so good. Check it out.
Yeah, I'll have to check that one out. Or we can watch it in a future, next April.
So then we will be watching Misery, and I'm pretty sure there's probably a good majority of our audience that probably have seen it. I feel like I would consider it a cult classic.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Because I'm by just the fact that I know a couple of the key moments because they're referenced so often just in pop culture. I'm okay, I need to watch it.
So this is a preemptive, my aunts are going to love this because I had one family friend aunt who was always what do you think you're doing, Mr. Man? Which is something that Kathy Bates says to James Caan in the movie. So there's a lot of great one-liners that I'm really looking forward to reliving and talking with our audience about after. So this is a great pick, Chrysantha. Thank you and happy birthday.
All right, well, let's get started.
Hey, you guys, that sounded so stupid. Okay.
I'm trying to remember some of how like Annie spoke.
Come on, Mr. Man.
Like,
all right,
Mr. Man, we're back.
Hey, Mr. Man.
Keep that in. Okay.
Can somebody else just get us rolling, just to start, like an introduction?
Okay, we just finished wrapping up watching Misery. It was Sarah's first time, as stated before. So really excited to hear her thoughts, her opinions, and how she took the movie. Jake and I had already previously watched it. If you've already seen Misery, you know what it's about. It's really great. I feel like it's a movie it grips you from the beginning, but just for the sake of maybe we have people who haven't watched it, Jake is going to give us a very good, just a brief synopsis of what went on in the film, just to give you some context so you can follow along with the discussions that we're going to be having. So take it away, Jake.
Yeah, thank you for that cue up there, Chrysantha, and thank you for this movie pick. Like I said from the outset, in the first part of the episode, I was pretty excited when you revealed that this was your pick. A lot of our listeners probably are aware of Misery if you're a movie buff, or just if you were like a teenager or adult in the late 80s, early 90s. It is a classic thriller. Some might say horror, but more like suspense thriller movie. And I was just thinking, within 5 minutes of the movie starting, man, they do not make them like this anymore. But let me get into that overview, and then we'll roll into talking about it. So the story is kind of like a thinly veiled, I think, metaphor for Stephen King's, own experiences as a writer and maybe his fears as a writer in dealing with his fans. The story is Paul Sheldon is a famous writer. He writes kind of like, cheap romance novels, all centered on a character everyone loves called Misery. And so he is famous for that. He's made a lot of money, been very successful for that. But this latest book that he's written is something that he's more passionate about. He's finally setting aside Misery. In the new book that's coming out, he's actually killed her off after an 8-book series. So it's a big moment. And he just has finished his own new novel, which is more about his own personal life and experience. So he's completed his normal ritual. He goes to this retreat in Colorado to write his book in solitude. And then when he's done, he has...
Dom
How does Annie say it again?
She says it Dom Perignon.
Yeah, very funny call out there. So he has his drink. He leaves the hotel. He's driving in his old car, but there's a terrible snowstorm. And the snowstorm drives him off the road, and he crashes so badly it looks like he might not survive. But luckily, although he's out of it, a passerby, supposedly by the looks of things, a kind Samaritan, sees what's happened, pulls him out of the car, and puts him in their own car. And we're left to think, he's been saved. Well, he wakes up a little bit later, 2 days later, actually. He's laid up in bed. He's terribly injured. His legs are badly fractured. His arm is messed up. His shoulder was dislocated. And we're introduced to Annie Wilkes, his guardian angel, who pulled him from the vehicle and has nursed him back to some level of stability here now in her home out in the sticks in the Colorado mountains. She is nursing him back to health by the looks of things. She quickly reveals she knew right who he was right away because she's actually his #1 fan. She has read all the Misery books back to back multiple times, and she even has a little shrine to him in her house. So Paul is at first very thankful and, obviously happy to be alive, but pretty quickly within meeting Annie, he realizes there's something off here because Annie is telling him, he's got to get his strength back. He's got to stay with her. The roads are out from the storm. The phone lines are out. So she will take care of him until she can get him back into town. Well, the story progresses and the phone lines never get fixed and the roads never get cleared. In fact, it becomes very clear that Annie has no intention of letting Paul leave, and their situation kind of deteriorates from there. And we'll get into detail about how some of that unfolds. But she reads his new manuscript from the book that he's just completed. She does not like it at all. It's too profanity laden. It is not up to her standards for him. And she actually forces him to burn it, which is obviously very painful. This was his first passion project. And she sets out on ordering him to write a sequel to the Misery books to bring Misery back to life. She's so enraged that he's killed off Misery that she now has it in her head that she's going to keep him locked away, typing on a typewriter. She gets him to finish her beloved story. Well, take a look into town, and there is a nice old couple, a sheriff, probably in his 70s, and his wife, who serves as his companion and his deputy. And he is obviously the one responsible, after talking with Paul Sheldon's agent in New York, for tracking down just what happens to him, because 2 weeks go by and nobody's heard from him. His last Misery book has come out. He's supposed to be doing press and things about it, and nobody can figure out where he is. So slowly this detective is starting to piece together just what happens to Paul. First, he finds his vehicle, then he starts reading the Misery books, then he realizes a famous line from one of the Misery books is the same line that Annie Wilkes used at her trial years ago when she was brought up on charges for those deaths of all those babies in the hospital. So he's slowly starting to figure things out, and Paul is trying his best to escape from Annie. Well, things culminate in the detective finally getting to Annie's house, and just when we think he's going to leave without realizing that Paul is locked away in the basement, Paul bangs and knocks over a grill, which makes a loud noise, and our hero, the detective, comes back in to see what's amiss, to see if Paul is really in there, and just as his back is turned, Annie comes up, blows him away with a shotgun, and goes to kill Paul. Well, Paul, in quick thinking, he says, "Annie, you can't kill us yet," because Annie has now said she's going to kill him and then herself so they can be together forever in love. But Paul realizes he can get one over on her by saying he's got to finish the book. She gives him one more night to finish her fantasy version of the last Misery book. And just as she leaves to get a candle for the ritual at the end of his writing, Paul threatens to burn this book that he's written for her. And this drives her into a rage. She's unhinged already, but that was the final straw. He burns the manuscript and she flies off the handle. She takes a shot at Paul, hits him in the shoulder, but he manages to get out of his wheelchair, overpower her. There's a brutal struggle in which eventually Paul kills Annie. And we take a look 18 months later, and he is in New York talking with his agent about his experience and how scarred he is by it. So a pretty intense story, not a lot of characters, pretty linear, but man, it really keeps you going throughout. But what do you guys think? And in particular, Sarah, what did you think with it being your first viewing of Misery?
Yeah. It was a lot. It was very stressful. Just knowing the general plot of the movie, I knew that Annie obviously was not this like sweet, kind, good Samaritan. So even just when she's like, "I'm your number one fan," and just like really showering him with praise and everything, there's just that element of creepiness to it that I think you have if you already know that she's unhinged by that point. So literally just like from the beginning, everything was really stressful. The scene where he gets out in his wheelchair the first time and he knocks over the penguin. He was exploring way too much, first of all. Like you take little steps. Yeah. You don't know when she's going to be back. That was probably, honestly, I think that was the most tense sequence of the movie for me. Because it's just like the way that you kind of like swap back and forth from Annie going about the day trying to buy whatever paper and then back to him struggling. I think so much of it is just like how much he struggles to maneuver the wheelchair, how much he struggles to like open the door and stuff. And so there's just like, I don't know, my hands were tense throughout that like entire scene. Obviously breaking his ankles was really, really brutal. God. And that, I think, you know, again, that is the one scene that I knew. I thought she broke his legs, like re-broke his legs again. I didn't know that it was like a block situation and like smashing his feet.
There's something about it right there with the block in between the ankles that like you can kind of imagine that feeling. And then that visual of the left foot just like totally dislocating and swinging around. It's like, that's not supposed to move that way. Ooh.
And then I think the most shocking moment to me though was when the sheriff got shot. Because all of that building tension and like he leaves the house and you think that, okay, this is gonna be that false lull, but then he's gonna go back and find him, and so the rising tension again, and you're like, oh, okay, good, they found him, how is this gonna resolve? And then just the sudden gunshot, I was like, what? But really actually liked how it ended with him being able to kind of put her through the same thing that she put him through in terms of burning the manuscript that they were very like passionate about, you know, and feeling that same sort of pain. So I don't know. It was all good. But I think Chrysantha and I are probably more on the same page in thinking that Annie is a little bit more intelligent and conniving. All of these little things are calculated on her end. Like even knocking the wine over was something that Chrysantha had pointed out. And yeah, especially seeing how it played out with her very quickly pivoting to try and explain away why she would have a typewriter and all of this, like this almost finished manuscript of a book that the Missing Writer series like had been based on. I was like, okay, no, she's smart. She's real scary. I don't know.
For listeners' benefit, one anecdote from the movie is Paul starts collecting these pain pills that she's been feeding him constantly and hiding them. And then he breaks them all open, checks that they don't have an odor or taste, and pours them into her wine on this night. He says, you know, we've just restarted this new book. We have to celebrate and have a dinner. So she steps away from the table after he convinces her to, and he pours it in the wine. And then she gets back and says, oh, clumsy me, I spilled over the wine. And it had never occurred to me until Chrysantha said it watching. She might have suspected that he did something to the wine when she stepped away, and so that's why she did it. You guys are right too. I think by the end of the movie, because I hadn't seen this movie in a long time, but I do think there's gradations, because like you can see it. Like sometimes she just goes mentally. Like in the end, I would say him being able to trick her into that final ritual shows that she doesn't have complete mastery of the situation. But I think you put it right that she's very used to lying. I mean, obviously, if she got away with all that stuff in the past, she has experience with manipulation. But yeah, that's an interesting question. Where does her insanity begin and her Machiavellian nature end?
Right. And I think you're right, because she is able to be manipulated for sure. Like that is definitely part of it. But I think she even comments on this a little bit. Like she's obviously she's a woman with severe trust issues, you know? So even though she's talking to Paul constantly about how, you know, she doesn't like liars and that he needs to trust her, et cetera, I think the distrust that she has of him is what manifests in like, okay, so she clearly noticed that penguin had been knocked over and placed differently, but she never brought it up. She never even insinuated that she knew or was suspicious at all that he had been outside of his room and stuff. And I think that is kind of her testing, right? Her gut feeling of distrust towards him. And I don't think she ever like really trusted him. So all of those little things, if he's offering her anything, she's not like 100% on board with it until kind of like you're saying, towards the end, in terms of like, oh, we need to finish the manuscript, right? That she was like, okay,
maybe she has like a complete mental break after she blows away the sheriff, and that's his opening.
I feel like it's like a mixture of, I think her insanity is always there, and then it just like, I feel like she just has, I don't know, it's like a control, but then a lack of control. Like she chooses when she wants to use it in a way, 'cause it's more of like a tool, like the way she goes about things and stuff. Because like with the penguin situation, how Sarah was saying that like she probably noticed immediately when it was facing a different direction, but she couldn't just go confront him and be like, oh, you were outside, and then he would have been like, no, I wasn't, because she didn't have any proof. And then it wasn't until she found the little bobby pin is when she finally did the confrontation and she had her proof, like, yep, he's been out.
I don't know if it's about her feeling like she doesn't have proof necessarily to fully confront him. The way that I read her character with all of that was that everything past that point was her testing him, like whether or not he would be honest with her or not. And obviously he wasn't.
That's interesting.
You know, so I think she was just like storing all of those little like red flags in her brain. And like Chrysantha's saying, I don't think she has like full control. That insanity is always there, right? Just waiting to like bubble up, but something has to trigger it.
That's almost like set, because I'll be honest, like as it was starting, like I had forgotten how extreme it gets by the end, but I felt a little bit like sorry for it. Like watching this movie in your mid 30s is different than watching as like a teenager, because I'm just like, man, this woman is so lonely. She's so desperate to just have a connection. And so your take that she was like testing the waters, and maybe she had hope initially that like she actually could convince him to like love her and stay with her and stuff. That makes it so much sadder. But I feel like the moment where the mask, I mean, you could say the mask comes off when she breaks his ankles, but I would say more the scene for me, like from an acting perspective too, is when it's raining and she comes in and she's like, her demeanor is totally different. Normally, she's like either real manically like happy and upbeat, or she's filled with a rage. But here, and Paul's warning bells even go off when he sees it, she's very like downcast and like almost like really down in the dumps. And she's just looking, she says, the rain's give me the blues. And she says, you know, Paul, you know, I know you're going to want to leave soon. And, you know, you don't have to pretend you like me or you want to stay here. You know, I know you're a man of the world and I'm a nobody. And you really get to see her kind of insecurity and self-loathing that I think has probably powered a lot of the awful acts she's committed over the course of her life. And then it's capped off with that great, she takes out the gun out of her pocket and she's about to leave the room. And she's like, here's a gun. I might go get some bullets. Bye. And you're just left with James Caan, the great James Caan, like, holy shit, I need to get the fuck out of here. That was such a good scene. I had forgotten about that one.
I think what she needed, and kind of like in line with what you're saying in terms of just being potentially like, well, I'll touch on it a little bit more in terms of being a lonely woman, but I think what she needed was hot Frosty. If you really think about it.
No, do not put Frosty in that house. Poor Frosty.
I'm just saying that was also a story of a woman who had kind of like lost her husband and had kind of let herself go and didn't trust in love or the world anymore, you know. Just kidding. But in terms of her being, I can't fully like, I don't know, view it with that lens because like she potentially killed her husband.
Right.
You know?
That's what it seems like.
It's exactly.
And all
so
the babies,
it's not like,
which is like the worst thing you can
babies
imagine.
And any like competition that she ever had for like positions of power, influence that she wanted. So I think she might have like a warped sense of loneliness and misunderstanding, kind of like what you were saying while watching it, is just like it's crazy how people will like justify their actions. And I think she was doing that, but it's also like there's really no basis in that. Like you can't be like, oh, I'm so lonely after you killed your husband. You know, like I don't know.
Yeah, it's interesting the way, and a psychologist or criminal judge, I should talk to my mom about it. She's written serial killers in jail, but they do develop these like complex and like from the outside looking in, like inscrutable, almost morality structures, but self-victimization is a lot at the core of it. Like, it's not to say everyone who's victimized then becomes a victimizer, obviously, but like that is something that can happen. And then if there's other chemical things wrong, you know, it just spirals. But I think Kathy Bates in Misery is like one of the great portrayals of like a psychotic, I think it's safe to say a psychotic person.
Yeah, I'd agree. I mean, I was doing a little bit of trivia when I was looking at which movies to watch, and like rewatching the movie now, I watched it less as like a moviegoer audience and try to look at it more from like a analytical lens, which I never really did. And it's interesting that you said that like you have some kind of I guess sympathy for Annie's character or Kathy Bates' character.
In the beginning.
Yeah. In the beginning, because
I forgot. Yeah.
In like when I was reading some of the trivia facts, like Stephen King himself said that his like intention for her character was to kind of come off that way, where she wasn't like just some evil psycho person, but there's some like lingering, I guess, like trauma or just like that feeling of like depth, and then like trying to convey that sympatheticness that maybe someone viewing the movie or reading the book, that the story that he wrote, would feel when you listen to some of the things she says, or, you know, maybe trying to understand more of her motivations and stuff like that. Because I do agree, like in that scene with the rain, and, you know, you obviously pick up on like something's not right with her.
Right.
And you feel bad because it's like there's only probably so much that you can do to help somebody with that level of mental illness. And obviously we don't know anything about her backstory other than what's showed in that little serial killer scrapbook thing she had.
Yeah. That's really when I was like,
her little trophy book.
There's no
her trophy
sympathy.
memory lane is like what it fucking was under that. And then the story that she shared about how when she was younger and would go to like the cliffhanger movies and stuff, and that she had like that outburst even then when the story didn't line up appropriately with like what had been already shown, and she treated it as like it's not fair. I don't know, she very clearly has a very warped sense of like, if you have said something or if you have promised something, if you don't do what you said, then you like being a liar is like the worst thing, right? Like she comments on some of these
part
things
of that too,
and
like,
cursing and like all
like it's got to be to a T. It's got to be the right way. I thought at first with that scene with her remembering her anger about the miscontinuity in her Saturday afternoon serials that she would watch was like Stephen King complaining, which probably to a degree it was, about fans who are overly, obsessive about his work. But I think you make a really good point. It's further evidence of her particular type of mania, and maybe that obsession with control and propriety.
Right. And I think that that's why a lot of her like overly nice demeanor, her politeness, her like very like, oh, I'm just a country girl. Oh, sorry, I made you be oogie. Like all of that is how she thinks is like, this is what is proper and I have to be what is proper. And the world also has to be what is proper. And when it's not, it triggers her. And like everything that she's repressed her whole life for whatever reasons, right? Like her anger, her mania, her like true perspective and way she navigates through the world and stuff underneath all that, kind of that like tumultuous psyche beneath the demeanor that she's like trying to keep so controlled, like just bursts out. And it's just like, no, she's crazy. She's great. I also thought it was funny that she finally does curse at the end, like in the middle of the fight. Yeah, exactly. I was like, that's such a good use of,
of all the ones she could have chosen.
So it's good. Funny. Yeah.
I was also reading that like there were quite a few like actors or actresses that were, I guess, lined up to play the role. Like originally it was going to be Angelica Houston, and I can't picture that.
Oh, that would have been a totally different
to be very
thing.
Different.
It could have been cool, but this is such a career-defining role for Kathy Bates.
Right.
I mean, that'd be like asking who else can play Indiana Jones. Like, shut up, no one.
Right.
It's Harrison Ford.
Yeah.
Kathy Bates.
Yeah,
is
exactly.
Annie
Like it's
Wilkes.
hard to imagine anyone else. Yeah, exactly.
And then the other ones that were considered were Bette Midler. Jessica
that
Lange.
would have been good.
I could picture Jessica Lange, Barbara Streisand, Roseanne Barr, Rosie O'Donnell, and Vicki Lawrence.
I feel like Roseanne Barr would be close to home. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like that.
No. It's such a definitional movie for that time period too, of just like, I think it helped kick off, like, Sarah, I know we talked in the past about our favorite eras of movies, and you talked about the 90s being your favorite. And this movie so encapsulates that tight, not a lot of characters, pretty linear story, high quality, good writing, snap acting. Like, it made me so nostalgic to watch it again because I haven't seen it in so long. But it's a good one too, because it's a good scary movie you can watch with other people that isn't like bloody or like scary, like supernatural. It's like very accessible movie, I would say.
And I did, because we had talked about it earlier. So just in terms of Kathy Bates being perfect for this role or doing such a great job, she did win for Best Actress. So it wasn't supporting, it was for Best Actress for this. Yeah.
For some reason, I was worried they would have tried to make it supporting.
Right.
I just can't picture anyone else doing. Like, I think she just did the role. Like, she solidified it.
Well, the physicality too. I mean, she knocked down, drag out was tough and strong, and some of that's movie magic. But you have to figure her and James Caan had some bruises after filming that last scene. But I
think that, and I feel like her face is so expressive as well.
She gets so much across with those eyes, and that either her manic blah, 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 or just like she just stares in the room and like something's about to go down. It is terrifying. Terrifying.
I also think the camera work kind of helped too, because like every time she would go on, like, I guess her switches, or she would switch into doing or saying something out of the box or batshit crazy. Like, I don't know if you guys noticed, but they always like squared up. Like she was always mid in their screen. Like she was in the middle, like the main focus.
Centered.
And then when it would pan over to James Caan, like he was more like maybe off to the side, or he was it was not all the time where he was always like in the middle. But with Kathy Bates, anytime she would kind of do her switching, it would immediately like, okay, she's in the middle of the shot, and then it would slowly zoom into her as she was continuing to go down her insane tangent. And I felt like that just kind of added more to the creepiness because her eyes would get so wide too.
I feel like that helps to add just that sense of like claustrophobia almost, or tension, where it's just like, ooh, this is like too close for comfort with someone who is very dangerous. So I think that's a good catch in terms of the way that they did the camera work for it. Just very, very good movie. Like I said, just tense and engaging throughout. And a lot of that was the acting. A lot of that, like Chrysantha's saying, is the camera work, even sound design, right? With like getting the locks and stuff where you can finally hear that click. And so you're waiting for the satisfaction of him unlocking the door or locking the door. So all of it was very good, very stressful.
A couple other things I want to be sure to hit on. How endearing the poor sheriff and his wife's dynamic was as like a working couple together. And, you know, she's like, she goes for his crotch in the car and he's like, now, you know, when we're in this car, you are my deputy, you're not my wife. And it's just like so cute. And they're always making wisecracks at each other. And Sarah, you said it after he's killed toward the end and we just jump ahead 18 months. I kind of want to know, you know, what happened to her. I mean, I know
like
it wasn't going to be good, but
right.
It's very sad.
I also feel like, I don't know if betrayed is the right. I don't know if I'm being a little bit like Annie Wilkes to be like, can't believe Stephen King did this, change this. But I feel like part of really seeing how endearing and loving that couple was, and like silly, they were good comic relief. They were, you know, just a very wholesome couple as well, very snarky. Was just so you can be extra shocked when he dies, you know, which feels like, oh, that's rude.
It reminded me of
to make me care about this character.
5-star final, you know, with that couple is so wholesome and then they're just sacrificed. But wanted to touch on that. And then I also, you were saying something a minute ago about something that led me to think in this direction. But I think part of what makes this movie uniquely terrifying and tense from a male perspective is it's rare that we feel, I don't know, maybe I'm making generalizations here, but the physical threat that I think is probably stimulating for a lot of female viewers of horror movies is not something that males, I think, have to contend with as much in the real world. I mean, it's the potential is out there, but it's not as ever present. But
you're not as physically vulnerable as often as women
way
are.
To put it more straightforwardly. Whereas in this story, he is totally emasculated as a man. He's confined to a bed. He's helpless. She's simultaneously nursing him back to health, but also keeping him immobile and at that critical moment, totally immobilizing him, perhaps permanently. And so there's this tables have turned kind of dynamic in terms of power at play that is really kind of interesting to watch as a male viewer, because it's just not a position that's common. And she uses, I think, her experiences as a nurse and as a caregiver to kind of keep him under her thumb, obviously. And it's very jarring to watch as a male because it's just not something you really imagine.
Yeah, that is true.
I'm curious how true that is only when you're thinking about, we'll call it physical vulnerability with women versus with men, right? Like, do you still navigate being like, oh, walking down a dark alley, I might get like, I don't know, someone might jump me, whatever sort of thing, right? Because I feel like for women, that danger of physical violence is usually like an awareness of male, right?
For sure.
Men.
Yeah.
Versus men don't have to deal with that thinking about women, but is that still like present as a consideration when thinking about other men? I guess that's just my question that your description kind of raised.
I think it depends. I'm sure it's different for everybody.
Speak generally. Speak for all men, Jake.
It depends on the situation. In a back alley at night in New York City, yeah, you're going to be freaked out. But like in general, if you're a bigger guy, it's like if somebody squares up with you, you're going to like, you know, they're going to get hurt.
Sure.
They're going to take you down unless they got like, you know, a weapon or something. But You know, it's
Right.
just like, it's not like you look at Kathy Bates and you're like, oh, that's
Yeah,
the
yeah.
nice librarian, or that's the kooky lady that I
Right.
see at this. Like, you would never, as a male, perceive that this woman would have you completely confined and helpless and, you know, total control over your life. And I think that makes her character more fearsome and unnerving because it's so unique. I don't know. It's just something that occurred to
Interesting.
me
Yeah.
for sure from like a gendered perspective. But yeah,
Right. And
sometimes
I
I get
wonder just
scared.
like how, right? Just in terms of accuracy, right? Because she killed her first husband. And,
Yeah.
you know, like these sorts of, I don't know, make men scared again. I think I'm like
Okay.
like,
Next time I
don't
visit
know, they're trying-
Texas, I'm staying at your place, Chrysantha, not at Sarah's place. Yeah, I love she's she's dipping in and out of her fantasy world the whole time, and you're not quite sure where she's landing from moment to moment. But man, there's so many quotable lines in this, and I'm just gonna like, that's gonna be the next 24 hours. Mr. Man. She slams the book down on his broken leg.
Oof. Yeah. Yeah, those outbursts were very good.
Yeah, it's really interesting because, like, even though the movie, like, there's a lot of tension and stuff, but I feel like with the sheriff and his wife, you get some kind of like relief from their kind of like back and forth. Like, it's cute, it's funny, but then at the same time, even with Annie's outbursts, like exactly like that Mr. Man scene, or just it's just so over the top. You're kind of like, what the fuck? It's like,
like it's ridiculous.
So
yeah,
quickly.
like you just want to laugh, kind of in a way, but it's like it's not like an awkward laugh, if that makes sense. I don't know. It's
it's and this just reminded me, because I commented on this when we started the movie. I didn't know that it was directed by Rob Reiner, and I wonder if part of that is that, because obviously I know him from like Princess Bride, Spinal Tap, When Harry Met Sally, you know, from these like comedies. I don't know if he's like directed other dramas or thrillers, but I don't know. I think in general, horror and comedy probably have a lot of similarities in terms of controlling like tension and the release of that tension. Yeah. But comedy is like with, you know, laughter, and horror is with usually the opposite. So I don't think that it doesn't make sense, but I wonder if that's also why that like sense of comedy in this also didn't even really feel out of place, because he was able to like balance those out really well too.
That's the thing. It feels like it's such a micro world, but it's such a lived in, authentic world. And just speaking to that great point you just made, it makes me think of acting, where I had a director who would always say, to be a dramatic actor, most people can do if you train them the right way and you get them to draw on experiences and get them comfortable enough to do that. But to be a comedic actor, and an effective one, you have to be very intelligent, because you have to have an understanding of timing and human dynamics. It's not as much naturalistic, it's more intellectual, actually. And so Reiner, his main background being in comedy stuff, arguably, or more lighthearted stuff, you might say. And then seeing how successful he is in this totally different dynamic while still pulling out comedy, I'm not surprised to see it, just because. And it reminds me of Jordan Peele with Get Out, which is also a movie that's kind of similar to this in a lot of ways, but one that is very funny at times. Absolutely. But very cleverly made by a comedic mind.
Yeah, that was a great movie. Yeah, I'm glad that you picked this one, Chrysantha. This was on my list for too long, and it absolutely lived up to its reputation and kind of the hype around it. It was very, very good.
Thank you, Chrysantha.
I'm glad you enjoyed it. And if our fellow listeners don't know, Sarah is a writer. So, you know, maybe one day when you have something published, just be careful if you meet someone who says that you're number one fan.
So creepy. Yeah. And that's a good point too. Like ending it to it, what used to be just such a like flattering or innocuous statement, right? Of like, oh my God, I'm your number one fan, or I'm such a big fan, is now just like, ooh, I don't know.
I don't know about you guys, but when people tell me that on the street about the podcast, my guard always goes up, because that is happening all the time.
Yeah. Exactly. We're just swamped and swarmed at all times.
I'm really glad that you enjoyed it. It would have sucked if you were like, no, this movie was trash.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, if no one else has anything more to add about Misery, looks like we'll be wrapping it up. And we'll be returning back to our normal schedule in our release of episode 7 in May. But if you haven't watched Misery, definitely go watch it. And then you can comment and tell us what you think about it.
Amen to that. Always nice to watch a movie we all agree on. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, y'all.
Bye-bye.
Bye.